Hello, good morning. My name's Rob Walker and I'm from Royal Mencap Society. And before I go too much into my slides or presentation, I thought it'd be a really good idea to give you an idea of what Mencap is and who Mencap are. Because I'm pretty sure that an awful lot of you have heard of Mencap as a charity, but don't necessarily know who Mencap are or what they actually do or what they represent. So we're a charity predominantly linked with learning disabilities. And what we do is we provide a voice for people with a learning disability to be able to live their lives independently as much as humanly possible. We're unlike an awful lot of other charities where an awful lot of our revenue and income doesn't come from legacies or donations. It comes from generated income. So it's services that we provide to local authorities and the NHS. So we provide delivery of care and support, which is quite unusual. Nearly 90% of our income comes from that source. So a lot of our recruitment is based about finding people that provide care and support services. So my talk is all about effective recruitment on a shoestring budget. Gosh, I would love to have some of the recruitment budgets available to me in other organisations that I've worked for or worked with. But with Mencap, it really is making sure that we get value for money on everything that we absolutely do. And one of the things when I first came to Mencap was having a real, true, realistic look at what it was that we had in terms of money and how we could best put that forward to get the best possible return on investment. Before I go into detail with regards to what our challenges were, I think it would be good to give you some kind of idea, a context of where we'd been 3 years previously before we came to 2014, 2015. So we'd moved away from a local recruitment function, each service having their own recruiter, and there's nearly 600 services throughout the UK except for Scotland. We'd brought it into an in-house function as part of a shared services model. And the other thing that we'd done was, for the first time, we'd brought ourselves a recruitment database. So we went from cardexes and pieces of paper and forms and application forms in a paper format to, in 2012, having for the very first time a recruitment database, which we were so proud of. And we'd really come a long way. We'd very nearly reached the 20th century, let alone the 21st century. So when I came on board, what I wanted to try and do was take it that next step further and see what we could do to add some further value to our organisation. So the challenges still are, to be honest, in 2014, 2015, it's a really fluid and highly competitive marketplace, and it's really difficult for you to be able to try and establish yourself in the world of adult social care. I don't know if you're aware or not, but 1.4 million people are employed nationally with regards to within that sector. It's got one of the highest turnover rates, especially for employees less than 12 months. Skills for Care currently scope it at something in the region of 24%, which is really, really quite high. Less than 12 months employment history within your organisation and leaving, 40% turnover. So there are real significant challenges scattered throughout the entire sector. So trying to really establish yourself as being an employer of choice or aspiring to become an employer of choice is really, really quite challenging. 2,000 plus new hires each and every year, predominantly support workers. We have a payroll of just over 6,000 people. 1,500 in addition to that are people on 0 hours contracts who work as relief or bank support workers, so they're the people that provide direct care. And then we recruit anything up to about 2,000 volunteers each and every year. So unlike other charities of our size, the vast majority of our employee group are not volunteers. They are paid employees because they provide a paid service. When I first took over the recruitment team at Mencap, we had adopted very much a transactional model of recruitment. We'd moved away from the real touch and feel aspect of recruitment by talking to people and engaging with them, to relying upon this fantastic new recruitment database that we was allowing to push our traffic through the system. But we felt as if we was actually losing out on something, which was that human interaction. And what we became was almost like victims, if you like, to our own recruitment database. We would look at the data and think to ourselves, this is great, this many people at this stage, and we'd follow them through the process, never actually picking up the phone and talking to them. Quarter of all of our new hires were via agencies. One of the things that recruitment teams sometimes fall foul of is that they end up managing a PSL, and like we did to, fall victim to being if you like, mastered by our recruitment database, we also then became victims to our own PSL, where we thought, this is great, we've managed to negotiate 15%, 12%, 10%. So we was pushing loads and loads of our vacancies out to agencies, and then managing that interaction, if you like, between ourselves and the agency, not necessarily between ourselves and our candidates. We was distancing ourselves further and further away from the people that we was trying to encourage to come across. And then, of course, since 2008, we have seen an ever-increasing cost of recruitment tools, whether it be job boards, whether it be printed advertising, any kind of marketing campaigns, banner advertising, everything has really, really started to go up in price. And I was already negotiating with our friends at Reed our package for this year, last year, so that I could try and make sure that I secured the best possible package from them for this year's budget. So the question I posed to our recruitment team, which at that time was relatively small, there was only 6 of us. So there was me, 1 senior recruiter, and then there was 4 resourcing advisors, all of which had just recently moved from being HR administrative functions to now becoming resourcing advisors, which anyone that's moved across within any area of HR, we're not usually masters of all. We usually go to one stage and then specialise in another at a later date. So that was quite a tough call for the team. But one of the things that they all wanted to do was to stop what we was calling the hamster wheel of recruitment, which is operating at breakneck speeds, going around in circles, but never actually getting anywhere. And even though we knew that we may not be able to break that cycle of having high turnover, what we could do is take a breath, think a little bit differently about how it is that we did want to recruit in the future, and what kind of service is it that we wanted to try and provide. So it really was about just taking a breath out, ignoring for a little bit the 2,000 vacancies that hit our job boards at any one time. And the reason why we do have 2,000 vacancies at any one time with that level of turnover is anyone that deals with adult social care or any kind of community health care will realise that the commissioners that pay for those services will readjust those contracts on almost a weekly basis. So what happened is one day Mrs. Briggs at 43, the Glebe, will have 40 hours of care. The next week she could have 30 hours of care. The week after that she could have absolutely nothing. So we're continually having to readjust and workforce plan in the future with regards to how many people we actually need. And of course, with more and more people being placed into community care, it means that we're a growing business model, so we're looking to recruit more and more people for more and more service provision. The one thing that we all agreed on was adopting a proactive approach to recruitment rather than what we'd relied upon previously, which was passive recruitment. 2008, 2009, 2010 was relatively easy within our sector because it was safe. There's always going to be people requiring support at home. There's always going to be a requirement for healthcare. So a lot of people were moving away from other sectors and joining us. So placing a newspaper ad, which was relatively simple in a local newspaper, attracted hundreds of people that was interested in coming to work for us, who'd worked in retail, hospitality, a vast number of different sectors. But we knew that with the challenges of moving into what's now considered full employment, an awful lot of jobs that are out there and available, then what we knew we had to do was actually try and engage more with the people that we was looking to attract. And one of the things that we wanted to try and do was move away from being just purely centralised and closing our doors on our key stakeholders, the people that we was trying to support in terms of their recruitment function, was working closer in partnership with the key stakeholders, so all of the recruitment managers, really trying to understand what it was that they needed and have more of a business partner approach, so we could get involved in things like their workforce planning, organisational design, and some of those things felt a little bit more comfortable actually to some of the people that had made that transition across from HR, that they understood the need for that. We also knew that we needed to have a look at a revised model of recruitment. As you can imagine, with 600 services scattered throughout the country, some in Northern Ireland, down as far as the Lizard Peninsula in Cornwall, everybody had their own technique of recruitment, and we'd fallen foul of actually just sitting there and thinking that the right person to engage was somebody that we had a really good conversation with over a cup of coffee. And if you liked them, that was great, because gut feeling really worked. We knew we had to look a little bit deeper than that. And some of the things that I've learned in other organisations coming across was that by adopting a recruitment model that actually focused a little bit more on behaviours and values and making that alignment between what a person should be expected to behave like in their how they behaved in their last jobs and bringing it through to where it is they are today, then we knew that we'd have more of an opportunity of have them working as a better employee for us. The other thing that was really important was we'd forgotten as an organisation, in terms of recruitment definitely, who were the most important people to us, and they were the people with learning disability. Now, if you are ever unlucky enough in which to be admitted to a hospital, you'll know that one of the things that's going to happen to you is that when you do turn up, you get a named nurse. So you get somebody that's actually aligned to you from that service who'll introduce themselves and say, don't worry, whilst you're here, I'm the registered nurse that's going to be, taking part in you. And you have that option to actually accept that named nurse, believe it or not, underneath the patient's charter, or reject that named nurse. We wanted to adopt something very similar by having the people with learning disabilities that were receiving the support and care as being central to our recruitment decision. So if you're employing a support worker to deliver personal care to you as an individual, we felt that it was their right in which to determine whether or not that support worker should be engaged. Because if you think about it, you're in your own home and you're waiting for someone to help you up in the morning, to make you breakfast, help you get dressed, wash you, take you to clubs that you like going to become your companion, if you like, in a lot of the sense of the word. You want somebody that you know or you feel is going to be important to you. So what we done was we looked at a variety of different recruitment models out there, and what we did was we blended two. One was person-centred, and we gained most of that information from Helen Sanderson and Associates, which we thought was really important. And the other one was behaviour-driven, values and behaviour-driven. And we blended the two together, which we made our inclusive recruitment model. The main thing that we managed to take from that was not just by putting together a series of selection tools and a framework that was flexible enough for our recruiting managers or our hiring managers to be able to take advantage of, was giving them actually something that they could use. Because when you do sit there and you're interviewing each and every day for the same position, your interviewing style can become really quite stale on occasion. You ask the same questions, and especially if you're dealing with 5, 10, 15 candidates, per day, you're worried sometimes that when you look into, if you could look into that other person's face as if it was a mirror, are you still smiling? And are you still asking those same questions with the same level of passion and enthusiasm to try and entice that person to come to you? So we thought that if we provided a bank of questions that was all aligned with our values, lots of different tools that enable somebody to be able to really offer some level of variety, whether it be assessment centres or structured interviews, we wanted to give people the ability in which to be able to access that, but also include a person with learning disability, whether it be a colleague or a person that we support, as part of that decision-making process, and that would always be agreed at the very beginning. The other thing was taking ownership of our marketing. The recruitment database provider that we'd been using was great, but everything that we pushed out in terms of advertising onto job boards was always branded within their name. So Mencap was never really known. It was fine for when someone had a negative view, if you like, of our recruitment process, because they'd go onto Glassdoor and Indeed, they'd think they was actually applying for a job with our provider. So they'd write this horrible negative review about, I really wouldn't like to, you know, if the recruitment process was based on what it was that I saw, it was never actually aligned always with Mencap. But one of the problems being is we didn't really have our name out there in terms of being able to market ourselves in our own right. The other thing was taking back control of the employee review sites. We'd left it for maybe 2 or 3 years. I've already mentioned Glassdoor and Indeed. But we'd left it for a number of years where people were either talking about positive experiences or negative experiences about working with Mencap, but no one ever really addressed it. We would continually talk about it as an organisation and say, you know, what is it that people think of us? But we wasn't ever willing to either engage with the individual or enter into it because we saw that as being quite difficult or troublesome. So I took it as being my sole responsibility in which to try and respond to some of those questions that were raised as to why was it we behaved in this way, or why was it we did this or did that. And one of the things that I really tried to do was be as positive as possible and encourage people to actually contact me personally so that we could actually have them as part of the solution moving forward. We've seen that the number of negative reviews has actually dropped quite significantly over the last 24 months now, and the number of positive reviews are actually taking over, and we see our stars increasing, which I think is a really, really good thing. One of the things that, as I mentioned before, that we was losing was that human touch, and it was understanding what was an appropriate use of technology. And it was remembering that some of the simplest strategies that we could actually engage were probably the most effective. So we wanted to try and reduce the number of external agencies we was using at that time. And we also wanted to try and retake, if you like, control of our own recruitment process. And one of those things that we wanted to try and do was move away from a reliance on job boards, but seek more day-to-day candidate interaction. So we reverted back old school. We went CV mining, and we signed up with almost every single CV database that we could actually find in the first instance, tried to use that as appropriately as possible, and started calling up and speaking to people. It's a huge task. There was only 6 of us, and I was doing it day in and day out. But people were getting to know us and getting to understand who we were as an organisation, understanding what our values were and what made us different. And our employer brand was based around what makes us different, which is we took a disruptive approach compared to anybody else within our sector. We're saying that you're going to be interviewed by a person with learning disability, and they're going to be involved in the decision whether or not you actually come on board, whether it be a colleague or whether it be a person that you support. And the other thing was as well was really making the most of our training. Our training is absolutely fantastic. It's award-winning. It's something that we really do invest an awful lot of time and effort into, and we take a lot of personal pride. So compared to others within our sector who was relying upon other organisations in which to maybe provide that training and then come to them on a slightly higher pay rate, we was explaining that if you came to us and your values were right, you would receive wonderful support, an excellent value-driven organisation with training and people, and the people that we support at the centre of everything we do as an organisation. That, of course, reinforces your brand and gives you the ability in which to speak to people on a one-to-one basis. And that personalised experience really did improve our candidates' journey. And the best thing was, by moving away from some of the job boards that we was having no impact at all and actually buying CV access, it provided us, a better scope, but at no additional cost. And my recruitment budget only just touches 5 figures, and that's everything from marketing and advertising across the board. So as you can imagine, you don't really have an awful lot to work with in the first instance. So, what were our achievements? This is 100% correct and accurate. So you can see that we managed to reduce our turnover new hires. If you recall, I said that turnover within the first 12 months as an industry benchmark is about 40% within our sector. I inherited at 33.7, we took it down to 22.1. We reduced dramatically our cost per hire from £122 down to 84. The projected savings for end of year 2015, we actually did achieve. It was closer to 85,000, which I was really, really pleased about, because anything that we do save goes back into providing services. We reduced our time to offer quite significantly, and especially when you think that we don't just hire support workers, but we also have to hire a lot of people that are also on what you would traditionally consider to be on 3-month contracts, 3-month notice periods. Reducing the time to offer period quite significantly was a real achievement. We improved our attraction rate, but then again, it was a vast number of people that had been, if you like, sourced by us directly. And agency contribution, we reduced from being 25% of all our new hires down to 15%, and decreased reliance on job boards was 70% down to 45%, resulting in much less cost to us as an organisation. So overall, we delivered more, but spent an awful lot less. But why? Because we no longer sat there and drove a process and was no longer transactional recruiters, but become talent acquisition specialists and went out and sourced and spoke to and engaged with our candidates. So that was quite a long while ago. So where are we today? We've now gone down even further. We have a 14% turnover within 12 months, which is really quite exceptional, because Skills for Care are still indicating that the industry sector as a whole is still sitting at about 43%. Cost per hire, we've reduced even further, down to £55. Our time to hire, I don't think we're going to be able to shave that any further, to be honest, but now we're keeping that as our own benchmark in which to be able to address or try and set ourselves against. Our average attraction rate, I think it was 7 before, we've now taken it all the way to 19, which gives us much better choice. And we've started to build up now a talent pool for the first time, which I'm sure for many of you, that's something that you've had for a long time, but within our sector, it's really quite unusual. And our agency contribution for external resourcing is now less than 5%. And it's usually only those positions that there's political sensitivities about whether or not someone from HR could go and actually recruit that role, especially if you're trying to attract someone from within a competitor organisation. And then we've still kept our job board reduction quite low, and we've increased now our CV Mind candidates up from 15 to 42%. So nearly half of all of our candidates sourced are through our own efforts. I do have a much larger team. We've now increased to 9, but they was willing to make that investment because they could see that it was returning results in the long term. So where does 2016 face us? Well, we have an ageing population, employee population. Most of our support workers are age 45 plus. So 2016, 2017 is looking at revising and redesigning completely our apprentice program. We've used another organisation within our sector, United Responses, being one of our major case studies on what a good apprenticeship program actually looks like. And we're trying to mimic that. There's nothing wrong with mimicking others within your industry sector if you think they're doing a good job. And the other thing that we're looking at moving forward is something that we've never done as an organisation, which is celebrity endorsement. Mencap has an awful lot of people that are very interested in us as an organisation because they have family links or family ties. So we're looking at another advertising and marketing campaign that's going to be aimed towards younger people, attracting them into the idea of working within the care sector, careers within care, which will have a number of people that are aligned with Mencap. So there's lots of things that we're doing to move forward. But thank you very much for your time.